very shortly as we get everyone joining in. If you have a friend who wanted to be in this talk and might have forgotten, please do text her or him and let her know that we have started. Today, indeed, we are privileged to have two people with us. We have Dr. Priska Oluoch, who's a director at the Kenya School of Government, moderating this conversation. And then we have, of course, Waziri Cecily Kariuki, who will be talking to us about emotional intelligence and its relevance in the public sector. I can see we have some comments coming in. Immaculate Chambutai from Kapenguria. Welcome, Immaculate. West Pokot County.
Thank you
very
very
welcome.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Feel free, just type on the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. We'll give one last minute for people joining us. Okay. So my name is Vicky Karuga, and I am a Janus Emotional Intelligence practitioner and also the managing director of Profiles International. It is my pleasure to have you all this evening to listen in onto the conversation, and what we're going to talk about matters emotional intelligence. I want to introduce at this point Dr. Priska Oluoch, who is the Director, Linkages and Collaborations at the Kenya School of Government. Dr. Priska is well read in the area of people and gender. And now, unfortunately, Dr. Priska Oluoch, I did not carry your bio with me. But as a good friend, I can tell you two things about Priska. She is very passionate about people, very passionate about how the public service should also be upskilling and taking advantage of all the tools and the skills that have been found to be relevant in growing what we call great organizations, great leadership, great managers, great stewards in terms of ensuring that the business that we do still goes on. One of the things I'm going to ask you is to please keep yourself muted so that everyone can experience this webinar in much the same way without a lot of interruptions. So if you're not speaking, please keep yourself muted. There might be a time we might permit people to speak, but if you have any questions, we ask that you please direct them to the chat. The chat box is there for you to be able to put in some key comments. So without further ado, let me welcome you, Dr. Oluoch, Priska Oluoch, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Vicky, and welcome our Waziri, Cecily Kariuki. This evening, yes, Vicky has said a little bit about myself, and indeed the evening is about listening to our guest speaker about emotional intelligence. Nevertheless, my background is indeed in the area of human resource management. At the Kenya School of Government, I'm responsible for our linkages, partnerships, and collaborations. And as such, I do try to ensure that we bring the human face to the workplace. The Kenya School of Government, as the national institution that is entrusted with capacity building of public servants, is very much at the forefront of all things emotional intelligence, because the public service cannot be lagging behind in what indeed is proving to be one of the competencies that ought to be present, especially in leadership. So we will be hearing more about that from our guest speaker, and we have lined up a number of training programs for different cadres in the public service coming up. Some of them standalone programs in the area of emotional intelligence, and others infused into some of the programs that we already have, because we have been renewing some of our curricula. Since I still have the floor, as we allow a few more people to come in, I'd like to say that yes, I'm also a Janus practitioner, certified, and I'm also a certified coach. And these two areas of learning, and especially of capacity building for human resource, are very important. I think the public service has profiled and has given them prominence, but maybe not enough. as Vicky reminded me, our Principal Secretary responsible for public service, Mr. Amos Gadesha, said in a conference last week with IHRM that it is time and that the public service has also realized the importance of emotional intelligence in the work that we do, in the training that we provide, and therefore we are going to mainstream this in the public service. And I guess that will happen, as normally happens in the public service, through the normal channels. We will be receiving probably some circulars in that regard. And it is because of that that we have also thought that we can start giving a taste of what this is all about and how it has transformed our lives as practitioners and how we think it can be infused into the work that we do in the public service. So that indeed, we are not saying we will be working differently, but definitely bringing in some coaching skills, bringing in emotional intelligence competencies in the work that we do as public servants, I think can only add value to how much better we can serve our country and we can serve the people of other countries as well, because we are also entrusted many times with capacity development of other countries around the region who look up to Kenya and how we are doing it and how we can do it better. So without much ado, I'd like at this point to introduce our guest speaker for today, Cicely Kariuki, who is an accomplished impact-oriented leader with over 30 years experience in design and execution of policies, strategies, and program interventions. She has led diverse institutions in key sectors in Kenya. She led and transformed the Fresh Produce Exporters Association of Kenya and the Tea Board of Kenya as CEO and board member. Waziri has worked in top government leadership roles, both as Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and as Cabinet Minister in the Republic of Kenya in 3 ministries. She was my Minister, Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. She was Minister for Health and also Minister for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. And serving as a minister during a period of Kenya's rapid constitutional, economic and institutional transformation, Ms. Kariuki has attained in-depth experience in statecraft and leading people, especially senior public officers and stakeholders, through the complexities and uncertainties of political structures. Waziri has served on several international commissions and boards as non-executive director, and she's currently involved in facilitating leadership effectiveness and development trainings, as well as leadership coaching. Waziri, I'm particularly happy to talk about this, to read that you are in this coaching space. Emotional intelligence training and assessments for ministers and senior government officials, politicians, and private professionals and business leaders. She works with individuals and teams from several African countries and Pan-African institutions, and she has also been part of the adjunct faculty of the Harvard Ministerial Leadership Program. She's actively involved as a public speaker and thought leader on leadership matters across Africa. I mentioned to her earlier that I have also read that she is recently enrolled to be a pilot. So Waziri, over to you. Please pilot us into the program, into the session this evening. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Daktari. Thank you very much, Vicky, for having me with you to share my reflections and my experience together with the people, the numerous people who have joined us. Priska, normally, one of the things that happens is that you deliberately, and not you alone, everybody chooses to forget that my CV wouldn't be complete if you didn't indicate that I did resign from cabinet in February of the year 2022 to go and vie for a political seat. So part of what I do currently is also strategy design for politicians, looking at designing and how to execute the same, even as I ready myself to go back and execute. And therefore that bit completes my CV. Otherwise, thank you very much for your very, very warm welcoming remarks and just sharing who I am and where I have been. I think it's important for me to say, because I may not be too new to the public spaces, a passion of mine while I was serving as a leader in public sector was also to assist or to help leaders who came after me to be better leaders than myself by circumventing the challenges and the gaps that we experienced in the public sector, but also that I experienced in the private sector before I joined government. And therefore, I'm living a career of passion at this point in time. It is a passion of mine that I held as I supported through mentoring various people that I interacted with. I'm hopeful as I see some of them grow and take on international assignments that my little contribution would amount for something. And therefore, I'm doing this now because there are opportunities that I think I missed as a leader previously. Today's conversation is around a passion of mine that, again, I stumbled into once I left cabinet and once I left the political spaces, and I was on a journey to reinvent myself. And the question I needed to answer to myself was, how would I use the lived experience that I had collected over 30 years, and how would I translate that into some useful lessons or tips for leaders who are coming after me? While I have been within the continent, because my passion is to remain within the continent, I also decided to tell my story through authoring my memoirs. And therefore, I did launch my memoirs, which has some of the leadership tips and lessons that I may not be able to exhaust within the time that we have together today. I did found a consulting firm, which again gives me a framework for me to be able to bring in my experience together with the principles of leadership coaching, and as a certified Genos intelligence practitioner, to bring in aspects of what I found as missed opportunities in the workspaces, particularly in the public spaces. And therefore, without taking too long on this, I have structured the presentation into about 4 buckets. And I don't know that Rose, you are helping me with the slides, please?
Yes.
Rose, are you there?
Yes. I'm going to share my
Let's-
screen right now.
Let's go to the slide so that I can walk the participants through the format of my presentation this evening. All right. So yeah, we are broadly going to be addressing the question of emotional intelligence and its implication for future leadership. And the future begins here. The minute you're exposed to EQ, then the future begins right here. Let's look at the contents page. The next slide, Rose. Thank you. So the structure will follow more or less that format. We'll look at what is EQ. We'll look at the competencies. We'll look at its importance and its implication. And finally, we are going to take a moment for reflections, final thoughts, and I'll be very happy to attempt to address the issues that you will be posting as we can continue with this conversation. Let's move on. So before I could delve into what EQ is and why it's important, Priska, Dr. take back to colleagues at the School of Government and government, including PS Gathesha, my great appreciation for the government coming on so quickly to embrace this new superpower. Normally, in my days, I think the lead time was longer than what it is I've heard. Last year, the day that I graduated as an EQ, no, as a executive leadership coach, which was the first one, I did invite your PS to be able to grace the event that I was graduating in with a few colleagues. And I did take time to let him know what it is I've been about. And he did come, indeed he did. He honored us, the coaches, with his presence, as well as a representative from Public Service Commission. It then meant we already were on a journey to embrace or to embed EQ as a skill in government. And I'm very, very grateful that it's happened very, very rapidly. And I want to also appreciate Vicky, because she never gave up and she kept on kind of back and forth and consulting with yourselves. And we are here today because of the effort that you all put in, and I want to appreciate you because of that. I thought I would begin my conversation by just locating the conversation in terms of what is effective leadership, because I think we are all here because we would want to be branded or improve ourselves so that we become more effective leaders within the public spaces. And therefore, for a moment, I thought my background would be for me to reflect with you what effective leadership is about. And, simply put, it is the ability to successfully influence and to support a team or group of people meaningfully, so that then a leader has to be effectively a good or a great negotiator. It therefore means a great negotiator can only be successful if they have a deep understanding of what they value at the individual level, at the corporate level or institutional level, and also have the ability to communicate what they believe in, what their vision is, what their value is. Now, in my experience that has been shared very briefly and very eloquently, there's some music coming there. I have seen effective leadership, but I've also been exposed to seeing what is not effective leadership. And I guess as a leader over the last 3 decades, I have been in both places. I have acted as an effective leadership and gotten feedback as such, but I've also once in a while been what can be branded as not an effective leader. But all in this, I have seen within that time horizon, leadership, effective leadership, specifically rapidly evolve. It has evolved from what was viewed to be a rigid command and control industrial era leadership style to one which is less rigid in the last decade or so. I have also seen leadership evolve from one that doesn't solicit or value input because the boss is always right and their word is law. But I have seen that quickly evolve to a leadership which solicits multiple perspectives, embracing different opinions in a boardroom or in whichever setup, and being able to appreciate the opinions and input of other people in their decision making. I have seen leadership evolve to one that allows dissent and productive conflict in decision making. I have seen leadership evolve from one where it is a straight line from the boss to subordinates, evolving to one that is more collaborative. I have also seen evolution of leadership from one where a leader knows what the employees want and that they want to be respected and that they want to have autonomy and that they want to be allowed some wiggle room to make their own decisions. And they also want to be given some safety net, a psychological safe space where they can also be candid with their supervisors and team leaders, as they make decisions and they live within the workspace. So that is what I have experienced in the last 3 decades. But coming on to today's conversation, so what is EQ and why is it important to this kind of leadership that has rapidly evolved over the last few years? I will apply the Goleman, which is a more widely defined definition. But please make no mistake, I am certified under the JNOS framework myself, but Goleman could be as well passed to be the father or the early fathers of emotional intelligence. And therefore, he defines for us EQ to be the ability to identify to assess, to control one's own emotions and the emotions of others and that of groups. That is Goleman. Allow me to do something that I like to do a lot of the time when I have these conversations, because it always follows me. The difference between EQ and IQ. IQ, the way we know it, is the ability of you to be logical, to argue logically and follow through, so that 1 + 1 is 2 and 10 + 10 is 20, whether it is in the mathematical or scientific space. We say it is inherent in you. It is a talent that is inherent in you. While EQ, on the other hand, is really what it is that has been defined. The ability of you to sense your own feelings, to sense the feelings of the people around you and the groups that you're working with, and to be able to make sense of that. So moving forward, if we could look at the importance of EQ, our topic for today, we could move forward. Rose, move to the next slide, please. Now, I wanted to use this graphical representation so I can demonstrate how EQ interacts with us and how it impacts the decision that we finally make and how we behave. I want you to think of an event in the workplace, and I like to use my own example. So as a young manager, I go out of my way after I have been given a promotion in the place that I worked. It was semi-government organization. And I spend time getting energized and feeling like I want to bring a difference in this organization. I understand my assignment and role. And therefore, the whole weekend, I'm consulting people who are outside of my workspace. And on Monday, I go to my supervisor with a lot of energy, with a lot of, hope that the proposal I have before him is going to be taken well and that is going to help us move forward. I'm just in charge of a department in acting capacity. And so I come up with these promotional collaterals that would help us to position our country. And when I go, with a lot of energy, I present this to my supervisor and he looks at me and, it's a Monday, perhaps midday. What's the issue? I mean, I'm bubbly and I'm saying to him, this is what I've been working on over the weekend, and I think this is going to be a game changer. And he says, And so who asked you to actually go and do this kind of thing? That is an event for me. Who asked you? That is the response I get. And quickly, that statement doesn't inspire me at all. It hits my emotional brain. And as if I was expecting the opposite to be the response, because I have overinvested myself in working this proposal through the weekend. The next, from the emotional brain, what I get is that I get very frustrated because I've wasted my whole weekend doing research. And I think that this is a game changer from where I sit. The person, my supervisor, is not the subject expert. And therefore I get worried whether I'm going to survive in this organization. I get stressed all over if I'm going to have a positive relationship with my supervisor going forward. And I quickly begin to get concerned that this perhaps is the wrong environment for me. What my brain senses is a threat. What I get in response is that I am not good for this place. And what I did was really not useful. The opposite would have happened if my supervisor said, well done, good effort. Let's try it, or let me give you further input for you to go and explore. The next motion that follows is that these emotions and the threat that comes my way quickly progresses to my thinking brain. And now I apply logic. And here, my brain feels like, or registers some level of being limited. I'm really limited because I can't be of any value in this organization, I begin to disengage and my brain is no longer interested. And that is the work of the thinking brain. The opposite would have been true if my supervisor embraced my proposal, albeit with his modifications if he so elected. In that case, I would have been engaged. My thinking brain would have been engaged. I would have been more creative. Indeed, the following weekend, perhaps I would have gone to come up with another new proposal altogether. I would have done more research. And how does the motion I've taken through, how does that now exhibit? It exhibits in two ways. One, the decision that I make. I quickly, by close of that day, make a decision, this is the wrong environment, and therefore I begin finding another opportunity, job opportunity, because I don't belong here. How does that then translate into my behavior? Precisely that. Every advert in the newspapers, the following 1 week, the following 1 month, becomes my companion because I'm looking to exit this place. And that is a demonstration from my own experience in terms of exactly how this occurrence of this event ended up with me. Very, very quickly, inside a couple of months, I had penciled my resignation letter. I was out looking for another job, and off I was into another environment where my proposals, where my thoughts, where my input would count for something. That is the science of EQ. Shall we move on to the next one, Rose? Kindly keep noting your input. So let's look at the competencies. Keep going, Rose. Go to the next one. I very quickly want to share with you the 6, just the one you left, the competencies, the Genius competence, that one. I just want to express or expound on what I've already shared by applying the 6 core competencies under the Genius framework. They are self-awareness. If you follow what is at the middle, and depending on how you apply that, you either are going to be in a productive state, which is in green on the left, or you will be on, your response will be on the productive state, which is on your right. And I'll use only 2 examples. One, if there are 6 core competencies, I'll use 2 of the 6. Self-awareness, which is an anchor competence and very important, will either get you to be in a productive state, which we refer to as present in the Genius model, or if you are doing not the right thing in terms of not being too self-aware of self, then your state will be disengaged. Now I want to take another one, which is a self-management. That is the 4th one on the list, the 5th one on the last on the list. Here again, there are 2 opposing sides of your state as a leader or as a person. Someone who is able to self-manage themselves will either, when they're in a positive frame, be viewed to be resilient, and if they are not in control in terms of managing self, they will be all over the place being temperamental. That is a negative and nobody wants to be there. I must confess that in my working life, nobody wants to be within the unproductive state, but we all end up being there because of different reasons. And that's why it's important that you actually look for credits so that instead of, by default moving towards the unproductive state, your default formula becomes the productive state. I will move forward. Rose, to the next one, please. So I wanted to stay a little bit with these 6 competencies, and I stay with them so that I take a reflection of what really each of them means very, very quickly, and what is the importance of each. 1, self-awareness. I've already alluded to that as being an anchor and very important. This is when you're aware of your behaviors, the behaviors that you're demonstrating in the workplace or even in your home space, social space. Being aware of your strengths and your limitations, that is what self-awareness is about. But also, importantly, being aware of the impact you have on others. It is researched and confirmed that leaders who are high in this skill are said to be present. That is a positive side, rather than the ones that are disconnected who are on the other side. Why is this important? It is important because a leader's behavior can positively or negatively impact performance and engagement of colleagues. I've already demonstrated my own case when I use the graphic. So if your behavior as a leader, an influencer, ought optimally to be the one that helps to impact colleagues and their performance positively. And that's why we want to grow that. Leaders need to know that if you have a strength in one area, it's not necessary that you have a strength in all the areas. And therefore, by just knowing where your gaps are, you'll be able to bring in colleagues and team members who kind of will cover up for you so that then you make optimal decisions. I will now quickly look at what the second competence, which is awareness of others. Rose, perhaps what we need to do is to keep the frame. You can either keep the circle frame or you can keep the one in yellow. That's all right. Let's keep that. Again, that is representation of the Janus framework, pretty much what it is I've walked you through. And looking from the top right, that is self-awareness. The two states, the outer one in gray, the inner one in white, which is a negative. The inner one is a negative. That's not where you want to be. So I look at the next one, which is the second one, awareness of others. And you're either going to find yourself in either or. You are either empathetic, which is a desirable state, or you are insensitive. Again, a little story I like to tell. One time I had a boss who was a lady. Fortunately, I was so excited working under the supervision of a lady, and I thought that she would understand I was a mother like she was. And I got a call from home and I was told my daughter had had an accident and that she was being rushed to hospital and I needed to quickly move. She had hurt her head. I needed to quickly move so that I can meet with the driver and the house help. And I told my boss, I really must leave. The following day, we had an annual general meeting. And to my disappointment, she said, no, we have an AGM tomorrow. It's important. Somebody's taking care of your daughter. So please finish the speeches which you're writing and then you can go later. What do you call that? Extreme insensitivity. It hurt me so bad that if I wasn't new in the place, I would have started again fishing for another job, but I was too new. The extreme, which is a positive state, I would have expected, not because she was a mother, but because she's a human being. Here is a baby, she's been hurt, I don't know the extent. I would have expected she says, rush off. In fact, I'm going to get you my driver. Go and see the state. If you're able to be of use, get back. That is what would have encouraged me and motivated me to go out of my way next time I have an assignment. So what is the importance of this beyond my own example? It is that you are able to notice and acknowledge others, to ensure others feel valued, to ensure that you are able to adjust your leadership style to best fit the situation that you find yourself in. Leaders who are high in this skill are empathetic, like I just indicated. Why is this important? It's important because if we agree leadership's role is fundamentally about facilitating others' performance, you then must be sensitive to how they feel, and you should be able to then directly link to the way they perform because you've been there when they needed you. Being aware of others is critical because you then are able to influence and facilitate the performance of those others, among other benefits. I'll look at the third one, which is right low, bottom right. It is authenticity. This is again about openly and effectively expressing yourself. You, the leader. You, the leader, honoring commitments. You, the leader, encouraging this behavior in others. Here, an effective leader will be expected to demonstrate or to role model for the people that you're working with to believe in you, to trust you, to be able to come alongside you. The undesirable state of an authentic leader is being untrustworthy. The positive one is genuine. That is a state we want all of us to be in. You know, having been in the public sector or in government sector or parastatal sector, you know that there is a deficit in terms of the level of trust. And it happens only because one leader viewed to be a leader, an influential leader in the public sector, perhaps comes across as not being trustworthy. And then we all find ourselves being branded. I like to tell a story, which I'll tell next time, about the struggles I went through during the era of NYS 2, quote unquote, scandal, because it's a scandal which has not been proven yet. And what that meant, and even my family, my children will go to a public space and they are told, oh, those are the children of Waziri Sisili, the car they are driving must have been out of stolen money. That is what we do when we don't role model properly or when we are all branded and put in one basket. And I'm hopeful that by going through these programs, we'll be able to develop more authentic leaders in the public spaces. It really, really is my hope. Why is this important? Because it does help us, once we develop this sub-skill or competence, it helps us to create understanding, openness, and feelings of trust in others. Just the recipe that we all require. Leaders who are guarded, who avoid conflict, or who are blunt in a way that others feel, project mistrust, and in turn also attract mistrust from others. Let me quickly move on to the top again. Allow me to move to the top left, and that is a skill that we call inspiring performance. An inspiring performance, I should have actually started the other end, but I'm already there, so I will deal with that. Inspiring performance, again, has two states. One, when you're high in, when it's about facilitating performance in others. Let's start there. It is about helping others in problem solving. It is promoting and recognizing and supporting others in their work. So if you're high in this, it means you are an empowering leader. When I projected what an effective leader is, and I said you are able to take different perspectives and opinions and also manage conflict productively, it means you then belong to the realm of a leader whose style is empowering, as opposed to seeing a threat and looking at the next most intelligent Gen Z coming across as if they are giving a threat around you. This is where we would want us in the public sector to finally settle. The opposite is true. You are indifferent if everything you see is about you and you're not the leader that empowers other people to even grow and become better than you. Now, this is important. And why is it important? Because research has shown that this compliance style, when it fails to drive discretionary effort, and therefore denies us of high performance. Because if every threat, every person around you is viewed to be a threat, it means then they won't step out of their way, they won't get out of their way to go beyond just your performance contract and the targets. But in the public sector, when we are empowering, you can be certain, and research has confirmed elsewhere, that people will go beyond the targets that have been set if you're the empowering style leader. Now, if we look at the fifth, the last is about emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning comes right below. And this again has two extremes. Emotional reasoning, you're either limited or you are expansive in terms of your leadership style. How is this important? This is important because, I'm trying to get this. What did we just look at? I think I mixed up my notes here. We looked at empowering. So we've looked at emotional reasoning. Are we looking at emotional reasoning at this point in time? So again, emotional reasoning, limited, expansive. We want to be in the state of expansive leadership style. And what this means is that when you're an expansive leader, it means that you are able to understand people, their emotions, their strength, the feeling, what they are going through, but importantly, combine that with facts when you're making a decision. For example, if I walk into the workplace and I have a decision that I need to make rapidly, if I'm not the subject expert, it behoves on me as a leader to be able to embrace data that is coming from experts that are subject matter experts. A case in point, I am a minister responsible for matters water. I am not a geologist. I have no idea how deep you want to dig to get water from a borehole. Even if I'm saying sink a borehole right here because we are in critical need, the people in Kibra need to get water, it is logical for me to also get the geologist input to advise whether that space there is aquifer and whether we are going to access water or it will be a business of us wasting public money. The opposite would be true if I was so certain of myself and my emotional reasoning is just about emotions. I'm called in and there's a cholera outbreak in Kibra, and the best I tell my water engineer is sink a borehole right here. It means then I don't come up with an optimal decision, as it were, if I'm that kind of a limited leader. You are in the public sector, and I'm looking at the final competence, and this one is on self-management. Reasonably self-explanatory, again, 2 states. You are either going to be resilient so that if you fail at convincing your boss, you wake up again and attempt to package your proposal in a different way, present again without giving up. Your team, likewise, will be borrowing a leaf from how you handle things. The opposite is the following: temperamental. And so again, in the workplace, you get in there, you have your technical team that is advising you, or your colleagues or peers that are working alongside you, and you think because you've been to Harvard or whatever, you've been to school, your ideas are best, and therefore do it as I say. This is the industrial era leadership. That's where we belonged. Do it this way or get out of this place kind of discussion. It is important because when then you are able to embrace the resilient leadership mannerisms, you come up with optimal decisions, you carry everybody along, you have better ownership in the decisions that you're making, meaning then implementation of the decisions becomes more flawless, the energy utilized is less, and therefore you are able to actually arrive at your destination faster than if you tell people, you know, I said it, just do it kind of conversation. Let's move to the next one. Rose, let's move to the next one as I look at the implication. I will, before I go to the reflections, I'll look at implications of EQ in the workplace. And I'll do so by sharing 2 or 3 research cases that have been studied and documented that don't just go to show you the importance of EQ, but that actually tell you there is empirical evidence of the importance and place of EQ as we move forward. So sustaining a high, if you're sustaining high performance, whether in government or in the private sector, based on growing or developing EQ is a no-brainer right now. And that is why, Priska, as you speak to us, you're saying that it is one of the competencies that you will be looking at in the public sector to grow. So again, I just reiterate by saying EQ is not just about the skill set, but it's all about how we connect with each other. It's about how we communicate with each other. It's about how we collaborate with each other, both in the workplaces, but also at home. I share 3 cases of empirical research that has been documented, which confirm the importance and place of EQ. One is a study that was conducted, and leaders were asked to rate the top issues that they face in the workplace. Of the leaders interviewed, 76% identified that people and relational issues are most important day-to-day, the issues they interact with, 76%. 24% of leaders interviewed indicated that finance and technical issues were most important. Now, colleagues from the public sector, you know that until recently, we put technical issues and finance resources to be most important when it comes to delivering on vision, targets, strategies, and on and on and on. The respondents, who numbered about 135, indicated that 89% indicated that EQ is highly important and growing in importance. They indeed indicated that is essential as a skill set to be developed for organizations to meet their top challenges. Colleagues, this is just a reminder that although your organization is made up of people, processes, and property, it is now the era of people and their emotions coming first. The reason, again, exemplified in another study is as follows. This is a study that was conducted in Pepsi, I guess it was Pepsi Cola. Leaders who use their emotional resources to foster engagement or a sense of caring and commitment for their people deliver significant bottom line results. So this means the studies that have been documented do show that teams with leaders who cultivate higher engagement will, one, by 50% more likely to have lower turnover, and that is researched. 56% of such leaders are more likely to have organizations that project or achieve higher than average customer loyalty. Similarly, 38% more likely to have above average productivity, where EQ is a culture that they feed on for breakfast. Another study that was done, this had to do with, this is a Pepsi Cola, this is a Pepsi Cola company study, which was conducted to show the link between EQ and leadership and the effectiveness of leadership. And it was clear in this project, in this research project, which was undertaken, focusing on executives. The results were clear in showing the following, that there was a 10% increase in productivity to a controlled population and executives that had been taken through EQ development. 87% decrease in executive turnover was registered, and a return on investment that was over 100% higher. Now, the final case that I'm sharing is one on qualitative benefits of EQ. Qualitative benefits of EQ besides the money and productivity. This was a study that was undertaken by Johnson & Johnson. We are very familiar with Johnson & Johnson here. I think we all must have enjoyed their COVID jab. The study done was able to demonstrate a strong link between superior performing leaders and their level of emotional competence. And there was a direct link. Now, what is the implication, therefore, in the workplace? The implication is a few of these, because the list and the benefits and implication is very lengthy and would only happen in a very, very long conversation. But we are able to demonstrate that the higher your EQ in the workplace, the easier and faster for you to build trust within teams. The higher the level of EQ, the more that a leader is able to create a culture of collaboration. The higher such a leader is also able to improve communication as well as accountability. The higher the level of IQ, the higher the possibility of resolution to conflict in a less, how do you say, contentious way. Importantly, the final analysis, you are able to come up with a team that is more solution focused, teams that are more engaged, teams that I already suggested are willing to go out of their way because they feel empowered. My final reflections, which is the final slide I wanted to reflect on, is that bringing all this together, what it means is that there is no doubt about the link between EQ, high or low, and effectiveness in leadership, performance in the workplace. And this I've already shared in terms of demonstrating the qualitative and quantitative research that is very well documented. Colleagues, my call to you, therefore, is that you need to future-proof yourself, your career, and even that of your teams and the institutions that you are either leading or are able to influence by paying more attention to and also developing your EQ competences. And don't do it alone. Please do it with the teams that you are with, you lead, or the teams that you work with and execute with. And indeed, do have a conversation moving upwards. I think I've been in places where you're able to delegate some of these, new thoughts upwards. So let also your bosses, if we still use that word, appreciate the place and role of EQ so that, one, you can invest as organizations, but you can also encourage them to invest in their own EQ. I dream of a day that in the public sector, but also in the private sector, in Kenya and in the continent, that we can be able to say we have collective EQ across our institutions, because only at that point are we going to see some of the negative things that are confronting us coming down. Allow me, as I conclude, again, to say I'm very thankful that EQ skills can be learned in a very effortless way, just needs your commitment. And there are so many resources that are available now. I don't think that I would have had the energy 10 years to have the kind of discussion I'm having with yourselves. There are so many resources around you, be it online, the research, the studies that are being documented, but you also have a critical mass, near critical mass of practitioners that have been certified who can be able to work with you as either coaches or placed back in your organization to coach internally, but some of us outside here are so very happy and willing to support you. So I want to encourage you this evening, colleagues, to embark on your journey of developing your emotional intelligence skills, and also support the teams that you're working with. We are here so we could help you, and that is why this afternoon I am happy and very excited that I've been called in to share my experience as one who missed an opportunity and one who is trying to fill in the gaps now, document, and also go to spaces where it looked very difficult to go into the public sector. I want to thank you, and I'm happy to attempt to respond together with Vicky to some of the issues that you may be raising as the conversation is going on. Over to you, moderator.
Gosh, thank you. Thank you so much, Cicely Kariuki. That was such an inspiring conversation, very authentic, very real. The examples I would imagine are very, very relevant. And I would ask Rose if you'd stop sharing the screen so that now at least we can be seen. It is in these experiences that you find you can actually relate to emotional intelligence from a very, very clear perspective. And a lot of times people might tend to talk about emotional intelligence from a very abstract point. And it is my hope, viewers, today that you've been able to just understand how fundamental emotional intelligence is to us getting our business done. And also just how much we get lost or our efforts are lost in translation when we encounter, as Cicely was sharing, leaders who are not as effective, possibly who have not taken this skill of emotional intelligence or coaching seriously. But to echo the last call to action is that this is a skill. It can be developed. You can choose to take action, attend either one of the trainings, get a mentor and coach. I also encourage everyone to get assessed and find out where you are in the grand scheme of how are you showing up and what rating will people give you. So I want to take any questions, please, that are coming on board. So this one, I will direct to you, Cecily. I don't know if you have thought about it, but there's Gwen Waswa asking, what is the relationship between emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Vicky, would you like for us to take a bucket of a handful of them and we can respond?
Okay, we have actually two. Please, viewers, people attending this webinar, feel free to put your questions on the chat as we continue with this webinar, so we can then have them responded to. The second question is, can you measure emotional intelligence in an organization? How do you measure emotional intelligence in an organization? I'm still trying to scroll to see if we have any more, but I believe you can start with those two.
Thank you, Vicky. So to the first one, the link or the difference, the link between EQ and AI, AI being the artificial intelligence, really, I mean, which is some brain that is machine made, to put it in a very, mundane, if you will, way. Emotional intelligence is about you, the person, a skill that you can learn in terms of how you relate, relations between you, the way you feel, the way others feel, and how you communicate. And my understanding of artificial intelligence is really a toolkit or a tool set that is put together using machine intel to be able to make your work easy to do or easier to do, so that stuff that you don't have to use your energy or emotions to think through can be presented or can be availed to you as a tool. In language, if you're typing your email by now, you know that you have some machine somewhere that helps you to be able, once you pronounce, to be able to complete it for you without applying any emotions or applying any brain, so to speak, except very mundane thing of seeing, you know, that it is right. So it's really an aid from where it is an aid that is external to you, the leader, and is a tool that you need to embrace then to make your work move a little bit faster and to be able to do those routine things that do not require a lot of thinking or a lot of emotions. The opposite is true about the emotional intel. It's really about the feelings and how your feelings connect with those of others and how that affects the decisions that you finally make. So one is just a gadget and a toolkit to help you get by. The other one is inherent in you that you can develop over time. Measuring EQ in the workplace. Yes, how do you are able to? The answer is that, yeah, you are able to measure EQ in the workplace. And we start by measuring the EQ of the individual, the person, and that we have an assessment toolkit, if you will, that we use to measure your EQ in terms of the 6 competences I spoke about on a scale, again, that has been researched and that is projected against a global standard.